Welcome back to the Center for Critical and Cultural Theory. My name is Dr. Roger Green. This is a contextualized reading lecture for Act 2 of Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. This is an ongoing series. There's lots of earlier readings, so I'm just going to jump right into the act without much introduction here. So we shift here to new characters in the play, to Antonio and Sebastian. We haven't met them yet. And Sebastian is going to be Viola's twin brother, who was on the ship that's been wrecked, but Antonio has saved Sebastian from the storm. Lots of homoeroticism, especially in Antonio's attraction to Sebastian here as well. It goes well beyond just friendship in the language. Antonio says, "Will you stay no longer, nor will you not that I go with you? By your patience, no." So I think both Viola and Antonio are highly charismatic. People are attracted to them. They want to be around them. There's something enigmatic about them. Even though Antonio is not necessarily is not cross-dressing here, is not disguised. He has disguised his identity, as we'll get to here below. And I'll have some things to say about that. I have some ideas, but Sebastian says, "By your patience, no, my stars shine darkly over me." Notice that they're speaking in prose. The malignancy of my fate might perhaps distemper yours. Therefore, I shall crave of your leave that I may bear my evils alone. If I were a bad recompense for your love, or it were a bad recompense for your love to lay any of them on you. And Antonio says, "Let me yet know of you whither you are bound. Just tell me where you're going." Sebastian says, "No, sooth, sir, my determinate voyages is mere extravagancy, but I perceive in you so excellent a touch of modesty that you will not extort from me what I am willing to keep in. Therefore, it charges me in manners the rather to express myself. You must know of me then, Antonio, my name. Antonio, my name is Sebastian, which I called Rodrigo." So he says he's been hiding his own identity. He says, "My father was that Sebastian of Messalene, whom I know you have heard of. He left behind him myself and a sister, both born in an hour. If the heavens had been pleased, would we had so ended. But you, sir, altered that. For some hour before you took me from the breach of the sea, was my sister drowned." So Sebastian thinks Viola is drowned. Sebastian hid his name, and so the question is like, well, why he had his name, and why is Viola so quick to disguise her identity? And when you're thinking about the time period, these are both sort of nobly born people. They have come from a rich family, and it could be that they're disguising their names because they don't want to be kidnapped and then ransomed as well. So that might have been a motive here. It's not really spoken to in the text, but it's just another reason to think about that. A lot of commentators on the play have said, like the farcical qualities of the play mean that we don't need to have like great rational or grand rational, reasons. Rational reasons kind of, it sounds weird, but for why the play is being what it is. But I think that's a useful one. And so Sebastian goes on to talk about his sister. "A lady, sir, though it was said she much resembled me, was yet of many accounted beautiful. But though I could not with such estimable wonder over far believe that, yet thus I will boldly publish her. She bore a mind that envy could not but call fair. She is drowned already, sir, with salt water, though I seem to drown her remembrance again with more. And that's the salt of his tears, of course. Uh, Now look at the language of love and servitude here showing up. So Antonio says, "Pardon me, sir, your bad entertainment." Sebastian says, "Oh, good, Antonio, forgive me your trouble." Antonio says, "If you will not murder me for my love, let me be your servant." And so this is, again, this language just pushes beyond just like friendship, right? If you will not undo what you have done, that is, kill him whom you have recovered, desire it not. Fare you well at once. My bosom is full of kindness, and I'm yet so near the manners of my mother that upon the least occasion more mine eyes will tell tales of me. And so there's this kind of gesturing that maybe there's a kind of androgyny or gender ambiguity in Sebastian's appearance as well. He's like looks, references to his mother, a likeness in mind with Viola as well. Antonio says that the gentleness of all gods go with thee. I have many enemies in Orsino's court, else I would very shortly see thee there. But come what may, I do adore thee so that danger shall seem sport, and I will go. So look at that shift to verse there at the end there, the rhyming as well. Then we go into scene 2 with Viola as Cesario and Malvolio. They come in separate doors. There's a lot of entering and leaving different doors throughout this play, and lots that directors can do when they go to stage it, and perhaps difficulty as well, depending on how you're going to set it up. But I think moving in between spaces is going on. Malvolio has caught up, remember, with Cesario because Olivia told him to take the ring. Were you not even now with Countess Olivia? Even now, sir, on a moderate place, I have since arrived but hither. She returns this ring to you and shows the ring. You might have saved me my pains to have taken it away yourself. She adds, moreover, that you should put your lord into a desperate assurance she will none of him. And one thing more, that you never be so hardy to come again in his affairs, unless it be to report your lord's taking of this. And he offers the ring. And Cesario is not taking the ring, and so I says, receive it so. And Viola Cesario says, she took the ring of me, all none of it. Come, sir, you peevishly threw it to her, and her will is it should be returned, and throws down the ring. Now, I just want to say something about like English people and throwing objects or dropping objects on the ground. My friend Giles, even in a bar, if one drops money or drops coins, it's considered beneath a person to pick it up, which isn't a thing that I see happen a lot in the United States where I grew up. But for my he's actually a Scottish friend of mine. Even if you don't have a lot of money, the idea that you would stoop to pick something up is it kind of it's an embarrassing thing to do. And so Viola does this. She picks up this ring that was thrown at her. If it be worth stooping for, says Malvolio, there it lies in your eye. If not, be it his that finds it. And so what I'm getting at is that Malvolio is doing something. He's not just returning the ring. He's being really nasty, and he's doing something really offensive. And look at the shift in language. So she picks it up, but then she shifts from, they were speaking in prose to verse. I left no ring with her. What means this lady? Fortune forbid my outside have not charmed her. She made good view of me, indeed, so much that methought her eyes had lost her tongue. For she did speak and starts distractedly. She loves me, sure. The cunning of her passion invites me in this churlish messenger. None of my lord's ring. Why, he sent her none. I am the man. If it be so, as 'tis, poor lady, she were better love a dream. Disguise, I see thou art a wickedness, wherein the pregnant enemy does much. How easy it is it for the proper false in women's waxen hearts to set their forms. Alas, frailty is the cause, not we. For such as we are made of, such we be. How will this fadge? My master loves her dearly, and I, poor monster, fond as much as him on him, and she, mistaken, seems to dote on me. What will become of this? As I am man, my state is desperate for my master's love. As I am woman, now alas the day, what thriftless sighs shall poor Olivia breathe? O time, thou must untangle this, not I. It's too hard a knot for me to untie. So this eloquent speech, lots of gender bending going on in the speech, admitting to being a man and not being a man, and then speculating on women and women's frailty. And so this is literally putting Cesario / Viola into this in-between space. She refers to herself as a poor monster, which would have been a word for something in between. It's not a nice word for us the way that we think today, but for someone who of the time might have been called a hermaphrodite, somebody that did, current language might be intersex, but there's also just a queerness about monstrosity as well. And so in legal dictionaries, like in Blackwell's, one of the big legal dictionaries from England, a monster, like if somebody is born with a deformity of some sort, they're called a monster as well. So you can think about like the Elephant Man, which is a famous 19th century case in a movie by David Lynch. That monstrosity. So it's not like the monster like a werewolf or something like this, although that again is also a man. So there's always a kind of humanity or a borderlines of humanity. Even in Grendel and Beowulf, we see this kind of tension at work too. So the monster isn't metaphysically far from humanity necessarily, and humanity being fully human is a legal context, especially for Euro-Christian people. You think about people in Guantanamo Bay today or on black sites, like some of the ways that the legal language and ideas work around them for that they aren't able to see counsel and they're not being charged and they're being held indefinitely, is because there are legal ways that they are not defined as being fully human and therefore do not have human rights. So we need to think about it in terms of legal stuff and not just in terms of how we might cast this kind of definition out onto Homo sapiens as creatures or our DNA. DNA doesn't exist back then, for sure. There is a kind of morality that the editors point out, that there's a morality about cross-dressing. This is the only time that Cesario says that maybe that there might be something immoral about just doing the cross-dressing of gender, because it's so deceitful that it's hurting other people's feelings potentially. But throughout the rest of the text, there just seems to be a celebration of it. We move on to Act 2, Scene 3, and we shift characters again to Sir Toby. So there's just a lot of this kind of shifting of characters from scene to scene, and it gives, if you're an actor in the play, it gives a wide breadth of stage time for you to be an actor and to steal the show. And so I think it's celebrated widely as a play for that reason as well. But just constant moving around. So here we are with Sir Toby and Sir Andrew again, the drunk buddies. And they've come in late at night. Sir Toby says, approach Sir Andrew, not to be abed after midnight is up to be up at times, and deluculo surgere thou knowest. And there's some different takes on what this means. Deluculo surgere as part of a Latin proverb. They say, quoted in Lily's grammar, to arise betime in the early morning is the most wholesome thing in the world. But of course, they've just stayed up late at night drinking, right? And now it's morning, and so Sir Toby is punning on the situation. And Sir Andrew says, nay, by troth, I know not, but I know to be up late is to be up late. So he's tired. A false conclusion, says Toby. I hate it as an unfilled can. To be up after midnight and to go to bed then is early, so that to go to bed after midnight is to go to bed betimes. Does not our life consist of the four elements? And Sir Andrew's having a hard time following him. Of course, they're drunk. Faith, so they say, but I think it rather consists of eating and drinking. Thou art a scholar, says Sir Toby. Let us therefore eat and drink. Now, remember, he's been called a scholar, and he's shown that he's inept at language and linguistic transference from French to English earlier in the play as well. Fest comes in here. Sir Andrew says, here comes the fool in faith, and Fest says, how now, my hearts, did you never see the picture of we three? And Sir Toby gets this joke and says, welcome, ass, let's have a catch. And so this is the references in the editor's notes. We'll talk about this. Various signs at outside of inns or bars in London that would have like a sign. So it's in the editor's notes in the beginning as well. Some of the sayings on the signs, like a tavern called the Three Asses, but there's only two asses on it. So the person walking into the tavern becomes the third ass, right? So there's a making fun of people who are going out to drink as well. And so Fest has mentioned this, and Sir Toby gets the joke. Now let's have a catch. Let's have another glass. Sir Andrew says, by my troth, the fool has an excellent breast. I'd rather than 40 shillings I had such a leg, and so sweet a breath to sing as the fool has. In sooth, thou was in very gracious fooling last night when thou spokest of Pigromatis, of the Vapians passing the equinoctial of Cobus. And so Andrew's kind of showing that he's an idiot, but he's also maybe got drunken speech, and then there's different speculations on what he's referring to. But everybody's kind of remembering that Fest was really funny and entertaining the night before. One of the scholars who's written on this thinks that it's like the Pigrogrammatis. Pigrogrammatis is a deformation of the Tetragrammaton, or the ineffable four-letter name for God. That's funny, I think, and is also showing that he's anything but a scholar, right? Fest says, I did in petticos thy gratillity, for Malvolio's nose is no whipstock. My lady has a white hand, and the Myrmidons are no bottle alehouses. Andrew says, excellent. Why, this is the best fooling when all is done. And of course, Fest has made reference to Myrmidons, and gives them money. So there's that kind of exchange of money for entertainment going on, and they have a song that Fest sings. If you have the Arden edition to this, there are in the back, there are some of the songs as well. I'm not going to sing them to you. But this "O Mistress Mine" song is definitely has notation to it, and it's in 6/8 time, which means it's kind of a dance song. Dun, 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 dun. O mistress mine, where are you roaming? Oh, stay here, stay and hear your true love's coming. That can sing both high and low. Trip no further, pretty sweeting. Journeys end in lovers' meeting. Every wise man's son doth know. Um, so that kind of lilting back and forth is just showing also just sort of another register of verse, and we're seeing lyrical songs that are love songs that are showing up in the play in terms of its textuality. And it's, of course, if you're watching the play, it gives a chance for more merriment to be happening, dancing, singing on stage. Fest keeps going on, and he's singing about unrequited love here. They love it. A contagious breath, very sweet and contagious in faith, says Andrew. To hear by the nose is the dulcet uncontagion, but shall we make the welkin dance indeed, the sky dance indeed? Shall we get drunk and see this, the ceiling spinning, right? Shall we rouse the night owl in a catch that will draw the three souls out of the one weaver? And so there's three of them that keeps getting mentioned throughout this scene. And what is interesting is that they're going to be a version of the three magi. That's what I'm making this argument myself. I'm not seeing a lot of it show up in the stuff below. I haven't maybe read everything there. But if you look over to about, so Maria comes in, they're having this drunken revelry and singing in the middle of the night. It's well after midnight. Maria comes in to try and shut them up. She says, "What a caterwauling do you keep here?" What a great word, caterwauling. If my lady have not called up her steward Malvolio and bid him turn you out of doors, never trust me. My lady is a Cathaean. We are politicians. Malvolio's a peg or Ramsey. And they go on singing, "Three merry men be we." And I'm assuming this is a kind of reference to the three magi. And if it's the 12th night, or if it's King's Day, January 6th, 12 nights after Christmas, it's when the three magi are coming to bring gifts. But instead, the play that's happening is reversed the kind of roles of the magi being wise men to being three drunken fools in the middle of the night, right? And just to point out to like the text to say that I'm not overdoing it here. Just below here, we see Fest says, "Beshrew me, the night's an admirable fooling," and then Andrew says, "Aye, he does well enough if he be disposed, and so do I too." So Sir Andrew was I was kind of like mimicking and just like, writing the coattails of Sir Toby's wit. He does it with a better grace, but I do it more natural, he says. And then Sir Toby starts singing on the 12th day of December, right? You could say on the 12th day of Christmas, possibly the same thing. But again, just the fact that 12th day of December is that we're getting the 12th and 12th night mentioned there. I think that there definitely is a play going on the idea of the three wise men, or we three kings. If you know that song, they're being reversed into fools as well. Malvolio comes in and starts yelling at them. It gets kind of nasty back and forth. Sir Toby says to Fest, "Oh, out of tune, sir, you lie." And then to Malvolio, "Art any more than a steward? Dost thou think because thou art virtuous, there shall be no more cakes and ale?" And he's using the thy here, and he's talking in. He's like, don't you yell at me. I'm above your station in terms of, of social graces, even though I'm a drunk. But he also is saying, like, just because you're not into drinking and partying, does that mean that nobody else should have fun, right? It's a poking at his Puritanness as well, which has already come up in the lectures. Fest here says, "Yes, by Saint Anne and ginger shall be it the mouth too. Ginger shall be hot in the mouth too." and so the editors do note that this oath by Saint Anne is a Catholic saying, and so Fest is able to do it, and by saying by Saint Anne to the Puritan, he's making fun of the Puritans' religion and the theology there. So again, over on the next page, Maria says, Mary, sir, sometimes. So Malvolio has left. He's going to go tell on them. And he's chided Maria, and she says, go shake your ears, right? And they're talking about him. Maria says, Mary, sir, sometimes he's a kind of Puritan. And we go back and forth depending on stagings and readings of the play, like just to what extent Malvolio is an actual Puritan, the Puritans being made fun of. They're, of course, the more extreme religious folks, and so it's in Shakespeare's interest, in terms of putting the play on stage, that he is tolerated by the Anglican Church. He's tolerated and celebrated by Elizabeth, being the Lord Chamberlain's men, and then when King James comes into his reign, he approves of Shakespeare's company and sponsors them, and so they become known as the King's Men. Now, so they're walking a religious balance beam, right, between Catholics who've been excommunicated from the country, or you're not supposed to be Catholic. Everybody's supposed to be Protestant, but the Puritans are the more extreme ones, who don't like stage acting, who don't like plays, who don't like entertainment like bear baiting, which I kind of agree with the Puritans on not liking bear baiting. But is he figuratively being called a Puritan, or is he really just like a kind of tight ass? Different readings. Sir Andrew says, oh, if I thought that, I'd beat him like a dog. Sir Toby says, what, for being a Puritan? By exquisite reason, dear knight? And Sir Andrew says, I have no exquisite reason for it, but I have reason good enough. So he's like, he's not very well, he's like, I'll beat his ass, but and Maria kind of says, like, it doesn't matter, like, the devil a Puritan that he is, or anything constantly but a time pleaser, an affectioned ass that cons state without book and utters it by great swaths, the best persuaded of himself, so crammed as he thinks with excellencies, that it is his grounds of faith that all that look on him love him, and that on that vice in him will be my revenge and my notable cause to work. Because he's so narcissistic and sees only himself and thinks that he's so great, I'm going to play on that as his weakness. And so Maria gets this design to play this massive trick on Malvolio. And she's going to drop a letter of some obscure epistles of love, wherein the color of his beard, the shape of his leg, the manner of his gait, the expression of his eye, forehead, and complexion, he shall find himself feeling personated. She says she can write very much like Olivia, her mistress, and that she is going to make it seem like Olivia has fallen in love with Malvolio. And this is just delightful to Sir Toby and Sir Andrew and the fool. This is hilarious to them that they're going to play this, and you can see that it's like it makes Sir Toby kind of fall in love with her even more, because she's got this idea, and I read that out, her just her takedown of Malvolio, just to show like just how sharp Maria is as a character here. That'll take us to the end of scene 3. We're act 2, scene 4 now. We've got Orsino and Viola as Cesario, of course, and then Curio. So we're back in Orsino's court. We're just bouncing all around in this act. And Orsino in verse, as always, says, just talking, give me some music. Now, good morrow, friends. Now, good Cesario. But that piece of song, that old antic song we heard last night, methought it did relieve my passion much, more than light airs and recollected terms of these most brisk and giddy-paced times. Come but one verse. Now, I hope that you're getting this when I do all this reading out. I'm not the best reader or speaker. I say a lot, and people have criticized me for this. It's like, oh, well, I just but here, I'm trying to show in the verse when I read it out, like how much smoother it is, how much more rhythmic it is. This is a blank verse here. Sometimes Shakespeare shifts to rhyming verse as well, but the verse is still there in the rhythm, even if the rhyming isn't happening, right? And of course, he's showing nobility with it as well. So we go on. Curio says, well, it was the jester. Again, it's Fest, right? From the night before. Fest was obviously having a good night. Everybody wants him back to entertain them again. And so Orsino sends Curio to go get Fest so that he can sing a song again. And then he turns his attention to Cesario or Viola. Come hither, boy. If ever thou shalt love, in the sweet pangs of it remember me, for such as I am, all true lovers are, unstayed and skittish in all motions else, save the constant image of the creature that is beloved. How dost thou like this tune? Viola says, it gives a very echo of the seat where love is throned. So commenting on music, this takes us all the way back to the opening lines of the play again. And Viola is able, just tit for tat, every time somebody talks to her, she's able to answer it with this kind of balanced language that has wit, that has measure to it. Orsino says, thou dost speak masterly. My life upon it, young though thou art, thine eye hath stayed upon some favor that it loves. Hath it not, boy? Haven't you ever been in love before? But I mean, you talk so well, you speak so well, even though you're young. Like, you seem like you have wisdom beyond your ears. He keeps calling himself fickle. He says, I change my mind all of the time, but it's in the object of my affection that constancy lies. And Viola says, in answer, have you ever been in love before? Viola says, a little, by your favor. And there's a pun on by his face, by his favor. Orsino says, what kind of woman is it? Of your complexion. So gender bending right back, right? Of your complexion. She is not worth three then. She is not worth thee then. What years in faith? About your years, says Cesario. And Orsino says, no, that's too old, right? Too old, by heaven. Let still the woman take an elder than herself. So swears she to him. So sways she level in her husband's heart. For a boy, however we do praise ourselves, our fancies are more giddy and infirm. He's talking about men wanting younger women. So if a man marries a younger woman, she's going to stay in his favor longer. Because once she gets old, then the man's not going to love her anymore, right? So there's just commentary on gender behavior. It's very point blank throughout the play. And Orsino is not necessarily praising men and being one himself, right? So Viola says, I think it well, my lord. Sorry. Our fancies are more giddy and infirm, more longing, wavering, sooner lost and worn than women's are. I think it well, my lord. Then let thy love be younger than thyself, or thy affection cannot hold the bent. There's a moment here of this kind of older man talking to a gender ambiguous younger man at work. And this, of course, is the dramatic setup of the sonnets as well in the 1590s, just pointing out that it's there and being echoed in this play. That same thing, make a copy of yourself, get married. But then the older lover in the sonnets becomes jealous of the younger one once the younger one gets a girlfriend. Orsino says, for women are as roses whose fair flower being once displayed doth fall that very hour. Viola says, and so they are, alas that they are so, to die even when they to perfection grow. Curio enters with Fest. They have a song. It's another folk song. It's lyrical. It's about unrequited love as well, and a lot of death imagery. And so if you remember back to my opening lecture where I said that this is the last of a series of comedies and it's entering towards a darkness as well, I think that we could point to these songs as part of that. Also, just how much death has already happened in the play, that of course Viola and Sebastian think that the other one has died, but then of course Olivia really has lost people in her life as well. Fest sings and gets money for it again. So again, that exchange going on. And that they talk about the pleasure that he sings for. He doesn't sing for pain, he sings for pleasure as well. Fest says, now the melancholy god protect thee, and the tailor make thee doublet of changeable taffeta. For thy mind is a very opal. I would have men of such constancy put to sea, that their business might be everything, and their intent everywhere. For that's it that always makes a good voyage of nothing. Farewell. Then we get this scene with everybody leaving, and then Orsino and Cesario are alone. Once more, Cesario, give thee to a yon same sovereign cruelty. Tell her my love, more noble than the world, prizes not quantity. Go back to Olivia, right? And Viola says, but what if she can't love you? I can't be so answered, he says. Even so, in truth, right? But you must say that some lady is perhaps there is, hath for your love as great a pang of heart as you have for Olivia. You cannot love her. You tell her so. Must she not then be answered? Orsino then speculates again. We're into these assumptions about gender, right? And that no, women can't love as much as him. They don't have the liver or the palate the passion that he can have for Olivia. So this woman would never exist that Viola is talking about. And Viola says, "Aye, but I know." And Orsino says, "What dost thou know?" "Too well what love women to men may owe. In faith, they are as true of heart as we." So she's speaking on behalf of women here. "My father had a daughter loved a man, as it might be, perhaps were I a woman, I should your lordship." Again, getting close, like if I were my father's daughter, I might love you as much as this hypothetical person that I've just mentioned, right? Orsino says, "What's her story?" "A blank, my lord." Remember back to my earlier lectures that Viola is a blank, that people cast their desires onto Viola as a blank. "She never told her love, but let concealment like a worm in the bud feed on her damask cheek." Again, this death imagery showing up, right? "She pined in thought, and with a green and yellow melancholy, she sat like Patience on a monument, smiling at grief. Was not this love indeed? We men," that she says in the we, first person, "we men say more, swear more, but indeed our shows are more than will. For still we prove much in our vows, but little in our love." But died thy sister of her love, my boy? I am all the daughters of my father's house and all the brothers too, and yet I know not. Um, it's almost a metaphysical conceit. And if you know John Donne's later, John Donne is almost a contemporary, a little bit later than Shakespeare, but there's some crossover as well. And his famous line, all princes I am all princes. So I might think about that moment there, and the language just kind of echoing in my English major brain. On to Cesario is sent to Olivia's. We get to Act 2, Scene 5, where we're back to Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and Fabian this time. So another servant of the house of Olivia, not the fool anymore. It's an interesting kind of substitution there. They are talking, and bear baiting comes up. They're kind of talking about Malvolio behind his back. Fabian says that Malvolio brought him out of favor with his lady about a bear baiting here, by saying that this is cruel, and it is a really cruel thing to do. It's just animal cruelty. That there's no way of getting around that for this very popular sport of bear baiting, that people will go out and see people who would capture bears, bring them in, and just taunt them and torture them in the city. So Sir Toby says, to anger him, we'll have the bear again, and we'll fool him black and blue, shall we not? So we're going to bear bait Malvolio, is what he's planning on there. Maria comes in, and she's got a letter in her hand, and she drops the letter. And so the plot is at work, right? The letter is going to convince Malvolio. He's going to pick it up because he's nosy to begin with. He's going to pick it up. He's going to read it. He's so narcissistic. He's going to think it's all about him. And he's going to be convinced that Olivia loves him. And there's a lot of back and forth here, as we can see. He is reading, and we see his imagination at work. We see Malvolio expanding out into imagination of what would happen if he were to marry Olivia, and he starts imagining all of the things that he would say then especially to Sir Toby, how he's going to put Sir Toby in his place. And of course, Sir Toby can hear it. So now there's a reversal going on, right? Because the trick is supposed to be on Malvolio, but Malvolio it gives him occasion to imagine and say all these things that about Sir Toby that Sir Toby can't confront him on. And so there's a funny back and forth happening. We get, as always, this kind of body humor. Around line 85 here in Act 2, Scene 5. Malvolio takes up the letter, and he says, by my life, this is my lady's hand. These be her very C's, her U's, her T's, and thus makes she her great P's. And it is in contempt of the question at hand. And so this is C-U-T is a play on women's genitals, and then the P, like peeing, or urinating as well. And Sir Andrew echoes it, but he doesn't get the joke as well. So it just shows how thick he is. Malvolio goes on to read the letter, and he's reading it out loud. Jove knows I love, but who? Lips do not move. No man must know. No man must know what follows. The numbers are altered. Earlier, I mentioned the podcast, the History of English Language podcast. It's really good. Podcast walks through history, and in a recent episode, they were talking about ciphers, and this is a big part of the Elizabethan era. And in fact, I mentioned in an earlier lecture King James's mother, Mary, Queen of Scots, who is imprisoned, and she gets caught in a coded letter exchange, and that's what leads to her execution by Elizabeth in the 1580s. So we know that ciphers, that different codes were being used in writing a lot during this time. And of course, it's a highly politicized time around religion and religiosity as well. And so the play is just steeped in the cultural moment here by having these like hidden codes that you might have to work out in your letter. And again, that plays back on that sign versus the thing, the signified tension, right? And he does exactly what Maria has set him up to do. Malvolio can only see himself in it. And he gets more and more excited. The letter then says that the person that's being addressed should wear yellow hose, by yellow stockings, and ever crossed gartered. Now, the editors tell us that there are various ways to interpret this, but it seems to be that this is a really out of date fashion. Malvolio is being told that he should dress this way and that he should always smile in front of his mistress if he has read this letter and understood it, and that's how he's going to show his love, because she loves him so much that she wants him to be smiling all the time and to be dressed this way. So the letter is setting him up for to be the laughing stock of the play, the bear and the bear baiting, right? This is Malvolio in his imagination. Daylight and champagne discovers not more. This is open. I will be proud. I will read politic authors. I will baffle Sir Toby. I will wash off gross acquaintance. I will be the point device, the very man. I do not now fool myself to let imagination jade me, for every reason excites to this, that my lady loves me. She did commend my yellow stockings of late. She did praise my leg being cross-gartered, and in this she manifests herself to my love, and with a kind of injunction drives me to these habits of her liking. I thank my stars, I am happy. I will be strange stout in yellow stockings and cross-gartered, even with the swiftness of putting on. Jove and my stars be praised. Here is a little postscript that says that he should smile more. And Sir Toby, so they're all, watching this happening. And Sir Toby says, praising Maria for coming up with this plan. I could marry this wench for this device. This is hilarious to him. Maria comes in. And Sir Toby praises her. Shall I play my freedom at tray trip and become thy bond slave? So again, that master slave bondage kind of thing happening here as well. Now Maria is, of course, a servant and beneath his station, and he's in a love. He's in an affectionate relationship. It's turning into love, and it parallels. So where they're coming together, despite their social status, at the same time, Malvolio is being set up to be rejected by Olivia, who's higher in status as well. So there's a nice balanced composition work going on there in the act. That's going to take us to the end of Act 2. We'll pick up again with Act 3. Thanks for watching. If you're still here, have a great night, morning, evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Support us on Patreon if you feel like it. We'll see you in another video lecture.